Hello, I'm Carol Off.
Good evening, I'm Jeff Douglas. This is As It Happens. If there were a list of today's most innovative social activists, Micah White would be very near the top of that list, although we would probably boycott it for being too hierarchical. When he was 17, Mr. White's interest in social activism was sparked by a copy of Adbusters magazine, and he immediately realized that he shared its anti-corporate, pro-environment mission, and he wanted to join the struggle. Well, now Mr. White is the magazine's editor-at-large, and he and Adbusters founder Kalle Lasson are credited with imagining the Occupy Wall Street movement into reality. Well, this past weekend, Carol spoke with Micah White at an event called Get Up, Stand Up. That event brought speakers together to discuss the importance of speaking out in a democracy and the ways that people work to get their ideas heard. Mr. White spoke with Carol about the ways Adbusters embraces new and innovative tactics to promote its ideas. Here's part of their conversation recorded on Saturday at Convocation Hall at the University of Toronto.
Hello, Micah White.
Hello.
Meme warfare. What does meme mean? It's spelled M-E-M-E, right?
Right. So a meme is basically just an idea that spreads contagiously. It's basically like a viral idea at its most basic. I use it to mean, I think at Adbusters we use it to mean basically an idea that captures people's imaginations. It's the foundation of the way we do activism, is that you don't try to convince people on a rational level, you try to convince them by painting a world that they can inhabit. That's really what I think Adbusters does. You read it enough and it starts to color your perception of reality. That's also what meme warfare does. I think that it interacts at a much more base level than kind of intellectual rationalizations.
The call went out to Occupy Wall Street, and about midsummer of 2011. Is that right?
Yeah, we came up with the idea in about June of 2011, and we put out the call in about July.
Tell us a bit about that day when you just waking up, wondering what was going to happen.
Oh, it was a very beautiful moment. I mean, I think you have to also contextualize what was going on at that time. So it was 2011. The Arab Spring was amazing. They had just toppled Mubarak. The Spanish activists were amazing. They were taking over. They had more people in the squares than Occupy ever achieved. So it was hundreds of thousands. And they had this simmering, bubbling with Occupy. And I remember that the day before, 2 days before Occupy, I talked to this progressive radio station producer, and she said, oh, well, we're not going to cover the first day of Occupy because the action is too amorphous. It's too unpredictable. And that ended up being precisely what made the movement strong, is that it was amorphous and unpredictable. So I think that I told everyone at that time, I absolutely thought that they were going to last 24 hours, 48 hours. We definitely had the sense that there was a real militancy and core there. But the perfect example of how it wasn't up to us. I didn't go to New York. Kalle didn't go to New York. And so we relied on the people who were there to pull it off. And that's the beauty. We didn't tell them what to do. We didn't send them any sort of money or we made some posters for them. That's basically it. And then we said, go for it.
You say that it was leaderless and that there were no leaders, but had you and Kalle not done that, I mean, you put the word out. You had this idea. You put the word out. You used these extremely compelling images. It captured the imagination, and tens of thousands and then hundreds of thousands of people went out into the streets.
Yeah.
Why is that not leadership?
Well, when we talk about leaderlessness, we're not saying that there's not the emergence of charismatic individuals or people that have, in meme warfare, obviously some people are going to be very good at creating memes. I think the difference, though, is that in the previous centuries, the people have invested their will in a leader. They have said that this person will represent me. I will follow this person. I mean, even at the most basic level of presidents, but all the way up to the highest levels of like dictators and totalitarian. And so I think the difference here is that no one ever said, oh, Occupy Wall Street, I'm going to invest my will in Kalle Lasson, or I'm going to invest my will in Micah White. No, they said, I'm going to invest my will in this idea, and that idea can change. And I think that the evidence of there being no leaders is that the movement did not go in the direction that Adbusters had initially laid out.
In what way?
Our initial position was that we should go for a quick campaign kill, that it should be very much like the Tahrir uprising, where they were only in the squares for like, I think 20 days at the most, and that we should push for something very concrete. At that time, it was merely that Obama appoint a presidential commission to investigate the corruption of our democracy by money. It went in a totally different direction because of the influence of New York-style prefigurative anarchism. Their argument was, let's not make demands of our leaders or our representatives, let's instead build the society that we want. That was proven to be a tactical mistake. You cannot build the society you want in the middle of Manhattan, in the middle of Wall Street.
The use of social media was so important to the movement of mobilizing people, but at the same time, I know you eschew, you have in the past, Facebook and Twitter and as things that have invaded our lives. Where's the balance? Where's the difference between using these to mobilize people around the world who then became engaged in Occupy, and where they actually start taking over our lives?
Yeah. I would say that there's actually an interesting, and I want to give a kind of a nuanced answer. I've thought about this a lot. I think that the answer is that basically social media is very good at launching a movement. But once the movement is launched, it became very detrimental. In particular with Occupy, it started to look better on the internet than it did in reality. And that was kind of the tipping point, right? We went on the internet and we're like, whoa, Occupy is amazing. I want to go check that out. But then when you went down to the street level, you realize, whoa, there's not as many people here as I thought. It's not as exciting.
It's dirty, it's messy, it's unpredictable.
It doesn't look as good as this website that I'm looking at right here. And so people started just looking at the websites. And so I think that it's sad but true. Because because occupiers had this way of also hyperbolic statements of how, I mean, the internet helps you do that, you know? And so I think that it would have been, if we have a chance, and I think we will have a chance, I would say you use the social media to launch the movement, and then you somehow turn it off. And you say, oh, I'm sorry, you can't check out Occupy unless you go down to Occupy. I think that may have been a little bit of a better strategy. And so I think the next time around, everyone's going to be more savvy, both in terms of how we present our message to the public, and also in rejecting some of the things that we took for granted, like that we didn't need to engage in electoral politics, like that we didn't need to put forward people onto television who may not have been spokespersons, but who carried our message the furthest.
But if the Occupy people get better at that, and we get better at understanding it, are there not those who will get better at subverting it?
Well, it's a tactical arms race. I absolutely agree with that. Both sides are getting better. And I think that one of the things that's really interesting, if you look at tactics, is that I think a lot about 1848, which was this beautiful revolution across all of Europe. And what's interesting about 1848 is that the revolution started because they had a new tactic, which was the formation of barricades. When news of the barricades as a tactic spread across Europe, it brought with it the way for people to protest. And so you had, for a brief moment, all of Europe was an insurrection. They toppled kings. It looked like they were going to take over everyone. Bakunin and all these people, Marx, were so excited. And of course, it collapsed. And if you look at what happened there, is that there's a time that it takes to create a new tactic, and then that tactic can explode and take over. But then once the ruling powers figure out a counter tactic, it is so much quicker for them to implement it. When they figured out how to get us out of the encampments, then they rolled all the encampments across the world were gone within, once Bloomberg evicted Zuccotti, all the encampments were gone basically within a month. But it took them from September 17th until November 15th to figure out how to get us out of the encampments. So I think that it is a tactical arms race. But I think that one of the things about Occupy that's truly amazing is how quickly and virally it spread. And so you have to develop a tactic that is going to so quickly emerge that it will change everything before they have a chance. And I think this is precisely what they did in Egypt. They did it within 28 days. They toppled Mubarak, and then of course it kind of, moved into other questions. So what I'm imagining is that there would be a movement like Occupy, that it would move so swiftly. It would not have the same tactics as Occupy. That the ruling people would not know how to engage or counteract it until it was too late. I think that their time is important. We had in America a 10-year gap between the anti-globalization movement and the birth of Occupy. I think that things are speeding up right now. I think that it won't be 10 years until something like Occupy reemerges. The shorter that time span is, the more people there will be who are just waiting for reactivation because they remember so closely Occupy Wall Street and the beauty of it. But I think that the first step we have to do is work in unison against single targets. And that will unite people. So it's not rational. You don't have to work on a rational level. You have to give people something that, here's how I say it. People don't vote for the strongest horse. They vote for the horse that they think is going to win. So you create a movement that people believe is going to win, like Occupy did for a brief moment. I think people believed it was going to win. And then people will join it.
I'd like to see a great response, a big round of applause for Micah White.
Micah White is the editor-at-large with Adbusters magazine and one of the people behind the meme that inspired Occupy Wall Street. He spoke with Carol on stage at Convocation Hall in Toronto on Saturday. That was part of an event called Get Up, Stand Up. It's a forum where various speakers discuss the importance of the individual voice in our democracy. CBC Books and the publisher Random House were partners in the event. In the coming days, we will hear from other writers and activists that Carol spoke with at the event, including Margaret Atwood and John Ralston Saul.